Computer. Okay. All right, so good evening, everybody. It is December the 29th, 2022. This is our little kind of get together for just really a new administrative and a drive for Family Forward project as we move into 2023 and any other reform groups. I am not egocentric about this. I know there are within social media, there are several groups. A lot of people are doing TikTok. A lot of people are putting that word out there in all kinds of various forms. I am so pleased about that. I'm so happy because until the narrative reaches a certain dynamic thunder, really, or roar, you are not going to get change. So I'm really excited about it. And also, if you guys watch, there's been a lot of national media, NBC News, CBS Sunday Morning. There have been several national media stories. Laura Ingraham did a story. So please watch and see who is doing those stories. And we're going to talk about this as far as the different roles that you play. But watch also who's putting out this media, because we need to start reaching out to those people and giving them some additional information. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I am going to do a screen share here. Hold on. All right, so I just put together so many people. I've done this. I've talked about this before in different lives. I've just kind of spit it out there in different ways. All of you are great in listening. Sometimes people put notes in the comments about what I'm talking about. I love all of that, but I really never just kind of put it together so y'all kind of know where my head is and what kind of efforts that we need to put together to move forward. So I'm going to talk about Family Forward for 2023, and really even just at the end, just kind of reflect about what we really have accomplished, because there are several things that we have been able to accomplish. So most of you already know, but I'm just going to go over this briefly. Family Forward has two different aspects. It does have just kind of Family Forward project, which honestly, I have always kept as an unorganized, just kind of organic social media project where just people can collect and convene, share their stories, share information. I put it together as a group instead of a page. If you're familiar with Facebook, if you have pages, people can follow, but they can't join. With a group, you can have members. We have about 18,000 members. It allows people to make their own comments. I did have to put Family Forward Project on a post approval because we get bombarded with people from countries I can't even pronounce the name of. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they find us, but apparently when we're asleep and they're awake, they do all kinds of searches on Facebook and they try to bombard our Facebook group. So I have them all on post approval and member approval, and I block several a day. So we have used Facebook for that. That has really been the best platform just to build a group. I know there are about 50, 60, 70 different groups. A lot of people have some smaller groups for their individual stories, which is great. But this is intended to just kind of nationally be a place to kind of convene. So we do have the Facebook or the Family Forward set up now in all 50 states. It'll be Family Forward Virginia, Family Forward Indiana, Family Forward Kentucky, etc. So if you are Family Forward Project, I ask that you please just go ahead and join your state as well. We do need administrators in every state. I cannot keep up with all 50 states. I have about a half a dozen really good people who have taken on several states, and they're trying to watch them. But, we do need people in states. And then I've also broken up the Family Forward Project into regions, and there are about 8 states in a region, and I have that set up on the Family Forward Foundation. The Family Forward Foundation is an actual 501c3 nonprofit. And over the years, I just have raised a little bit of money. I've had a few little fundraising projects where, I kind of funded it, did the underneath funding, such as postcards or letters, and then people would give a little bit of money. We were able to collect about $3,000 or $100,000 in that. And I did use the money from the Family Forward Foundation to pay for our Airbnb. And we sponsored the trip to Washington, D.C. in September 2022. So for growth and development, we need to look at a couple different things. And one is just social media. And, you know, in an ideal world, we would have sort of a general social media manager, because there are so many platforms now and we need to keep pushing out on several platforms. We do have some individual people who have taken on certain platforms to tell their story, such as Instagram, TikTok, etc. I think that's fine. More power to them. You know, I've seen several of their stories. Sometimes they take my video clips and they put them up, and it's really just getting it out there, getting that story out there. So we need to share those Family Forward posts, manage the members, etc. So again, I do need an administrator in every state. Even if it's not your state, you might kind of help us take a look at if you could pick up 1 or 2 states just to kind of help manage the membership. That would be great. And then Family Forward as an organization, or as this organic platform for social change, really has 3 main roles that are different, and everybody's going to have different skills. But I want people need to look into these roles and go, where would I fit the best and how can I be most helpful? Because these are volunteer roles. These are volunteer positions. I am, you know, I do a lot of all of these, and, you know, it's really overwhelming, even just to handle Tennessee. And I'm going to talk about some of those lobbying efforts. But those 3 roles are a researcher, lobbying, and organizing, or an organizer. So let's talk about research. So research is, and we've got some great researchers. We've got some great researchers who are sending me stuff through Messenger, so I can pay attention what's going on in other states. If you aren't muted, go ahead and mute, because I can't see everybody now since I've got you in this view. So researching, and a lot of that is getting on, you know, being on your computer, being on your phone. What kind of information do we need? You need to know how to research legislation. You need to know how to research the laws that are already on the books, how to research agency information, which is your Child Protective Services agency in your state or another state that you want to help work on, budget information for your state and that agency, news. I can't say it enough. You know, I have seen in Tennessee, we've got about 4 reporters in Tennessee who have picked up different stories with CPS. I always put down their name. When you see a news story, don't just run through the news story, but actually like write down who is writing the story, who's the reporter, and typically they will have like an email address, and you want to be able to collect this information. And if you have a particular information you want to send them, but you may not have it right then, you might just have it, you know, 2 or 3 months down the road. Your state may have an incredible story that needs to be shared. So we need to collect that information and that data. Academic. This is so important. And I think this is one place where the Family Forward Project has really just not invested their time and resources in finding out the academics of this. Now, Laura in Missouri is actually taking some courses. She's actually going to be teaching a course. I think she may be putting together a course. She took a whole course for a master's program that she has used it to tell the story of child welfare reform. And she's shared those with me. She's done an incredible job. And her and I have had this conversation about teaching. But also over the years, I am such an information hoarder, and I have collected all this information on child welfare. Now, while I was practicing law full time, my time was very limited as to what I could actually just sit for hours and hours and hours and read. But I will tell you, and I'm going to show you actually part of this, because when I sat down this weekend, and I really intended, there were 2 audits that came out in Tennessee, one from 2020 and one from 2022. But I had actually collected a lot of academic stories, and particularly about, let me pull this up. So over the years, I have collected stories about parent-child separation, about the value of visitation, about ambiguous loss in foster care, and I mean, down to the nuances of how that child's brain is being affected by having to redesignate roles, about having ambiguity and not even knowing the time frames. So there are stories and academic reports. I'm going to pull a couple of these out. Like here's one. I know you can't really see it very well, but this is way back from 2009. And this is a 2009 story about children's lived experience of the transition into foster care. And then there are several stories since then. I'm looking for those academians who took an interest in it. So again, just like talking about the news, when we look at the academics in your state, in your community, we want to, there are lots of grants out there. So we want to kind of engender that interest in it. And we also want to see if there's anybody in your communities or in your state. Every state has a major university. Every state has a major social work program. You know, there are Title IV scholarships. So we want to get into the academics of this because there's so much good information out there. And we are fighting a judicial system who has tried to redefine everything about the parent-child relationship to the benefit of the agency. And we know that that's not true. All right. And then finally, just people. Who are the people in your community, in your state, who are just those, not necessarily the leaders. Of course, you want to know who the leaders are, but you know, in Tennessee, I am watching influencers, I guess you would call them. They're not necessarily like big bloggers or big YouTubers, but those people who are actually out there influencing other lawmakers or showing up to speak, or those who just show up at all the political events. So who are the people? Because those are people that we're going to want to talk to. Now, I have been working this to death in Tennessee. And of course, in Tennessee, I already know, and Tennessee is kind of an unusual state because we have had this influx of people who are influencers. We've got Michael Knowles, we've had Robbie Starbucks, we've had Candace Owens. So I'm paying attention to all those people who are becoming these influencers within the state of Tennessee. All right, lobbying. So we are citizen lobbyists, right? So as working in the lobbying section of Family Forward, it's understanding how to talk to lawmakers, knowing the lawmakers, knowing your legislative website, knowing how to find legislation, and then really getting into the background of legislators, because you don't know how important it is to be able to look at a legislator and say, oh, okay, well, that guy, not only is he a legislator, but he was a psychologist. So I've done this, of course, in Tennessee with a lot of legislators. And for instance, I'll give you an example. Page Wally is a senator. I started looking him up and doing a little history on him. Well, he was a psychologist. And not only that, I found out that for a very short period of time, like 9 months, he was actually the commissioner of DCS. So when I talk to him, I know how to frame my conversation with him. There are some legislators who are attorneys. There are some who are pharmacists. There are some who are car salesmen. Okay, they come from all different walks of life. And it's important that you know that, because that is going to frame part of their mentality. The legislative website as well. And we're going to click over to the Tennessee so I can show you there are ways to navigate that. You can find legislators, legislation, committees, etc. All right, the state legislative bodies. So every state has two legislative bodies, just like federal, I'm going to say, except I think Nebraska is the one state that is called a unicameral state, and it only has one legislative body. But almost every other state is going to have a state house and a state senate, and both of those are geographic. So you will have a state house representative and you will have a state senator that is geographically identified with where you live. All right, now this differs. Going to talk about federal. Let me see if I put it on here. It must be the next page. Federal is going to be different because your House representatives are geographic, but your but your federal senators are not. They are for the entire state. So now you're like, for instance, in Tennessee, we have 99 House representatives and we have 22 senators. So the senators cover a larger geographic. They are involved in a little bit different way. Most of the bills start in the House, but you really have to go in to look at a bill having a Senate and a House sponsor. Okay, excuse me. All right, I'm going to click over, see if this will take me. Ah, look at that. Perfect. All right. So for instance, this is the Tennessee. I don't know how I'm going to get back. We'll worry about that in a minute here. But this is the Tennessee General Assembly website. It's a great website. And you notice up here, it's just capital.tn.gov. But you should be able to find your General Assembly or legislative body for any state. Now here, what do I have? I've got legislators where I can go to Senate, Maine, Senate members, House Maine, House members, find my legislator. You can type in an address. Legislation, I'm going to come back to that in a minute, but you can do search for bills. Videos, you can look at the videos of the meetings. And I actually will sometimes put on these videos on my phone and screen record. If you don't know how to screen record on your phone, you probably need to learn to do that because it comes in very valuable. It has schedules and calendars. It has the committees. It has a directory. Now you need to know what the committees are because there are certain committees that are going to be assigned to deal with the bills that you want, and you're going to have to know who those people are. So for instance, in Tennessee in the House, we have let me find it here. Select committees. Okay, hang on, local government. Here we go, right here. Civil justice. There is a subcommittee called Children and Family Affairs Subcommittee. So I can go on that committee. This has Mary Littleton, who was a teacher from a very rural county. She is the chair. She's been the chair since 2019. And quite honestly, she and I have not really we're a little bit like salt and vinegar, but I just don't think, but since we first met, she has seen horrible reviews of DCS, so hopefully that will change. But you see here, we have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 committee members, Miss Bricken, Eldridge, Farmer, Gillespie, and Harris. So you can click on each one. You can find out whether they're Republican or Democrat. You can find out where they're from. You can find out what their background is. I went in last year and I sat down and talked to every one of these people individually. For instance, this is Representative Andrew Farmer. He is from East Tennessee. And as I go through here and I look at their personal information, I can tell that he has an attorney background. And then I can look at all the committees that he is on. So I know a little bit about him more than just this one committee. And that's important too, because for instance, he's the chair of the Civil Justice Committee. So that's really important to me because I have to go through the subcommittee before you can go to the committee. And then he would be the chair of that committee. So I had actually a very good conversation with him. All right, now let's go back up to, of course, schedules and calendars. As the session begins, this is very important because you can go to, now they don't have anything set, of course, this week. Next week, they probably don't have anything. I don't know if I can go any further. I think the session will probably begin about let's see, Monday the 16th. I think it begins the 16th or 17th, but as you go to these calendars, you can, oh, there we go, right there, Thursday. Okay, so there's a finance budget hearing, and you can actually go usually on an email so that you get notifications of things. And when this budget hearing commences, I can actually click on this little view video and I can watch the video of the hearing. This is very, very important. All right, now legislation, this is really important. So browse by subject. So I can go here and I usually, if I want to do a search, I search children, but I'm going to go here alphabetically. I'm going to go to C. Now they may not have any of them up yet because you see the session hasn't started, but they already have some. Now these may, I'll go to children and I go Department of Children's Services. Let's see if they have anything up. Okay, so this was filed. Oh gosh, we have something that was filed 12/8 and 12/29. Okay, this is the one where they are extending the department for another 6 months. So I need to go back and pull that bill up. And then there's another one they're trying to get to extend it to 2027. Oh my gosh, that's horrible. All right, so your legislative website is very important. All right, let me go back over here. Okay, good. All right, so the people, like I said, the legislators, there's going to be secretaries, a chief of staff, a scheduler in your state legislative bodies. The House has very, very limited staff. They generally will only have one other person in their office. The senators may have 2 people. They may have a researcher. They may have a scheduler, chief of staff, but really they don't get that many people call on them except for lobbyists, state lobbyists. So scheduling is usually much easier for them, but they do get kind of crazy once they start their session. Now in Tennessee, their session goes Monday through Wednesday, and then Thursday morning they have a joint session and then they go home. So like in Tennessee, I can look at scheduling things. I can kind of look at their committees, but also like Thursday afternoon, if I can talk them into hanging around on Thursday afternoon after their joint session, that's usually a good time to talk. Now, the committee meetings, I just showed you the calendar. The committee meetings are open to the public. They're not always open to public comment. Now, I've had the opportunity in the past where I can email the chair of the committee and say, I've got, we want to make some public comments on some bills. And they will, used to be fine with that. And it had to be 3 minutes. So you are limited to 3 minutes and you've got to be prepared. If you're going to do that, if there is a particular bill, and I really anticipate there's going to be a lot of bills this year that have to do with families. And I mean, it's going to touch everything from abortion to gender transition to the textbooks and stuff and the things they're teaching kids in school. And we've got to look at it very closely. Every single state, it seems like, is making some kind of change in their child welfare system. So we need to pay close attention. The other meetings is there will also be special sessions. Now, there was just a special session in Tennessee on the audit on December the 14th. I watched the whole thing. I actually did some summaries of that and some criticism. They're not asking the right questions. Even when they have an oversight, they're not asking the right questions. And that's why we need to become active in this so that these legislators know what kind of questions should they be asking. For instance, in our particular case, they were talking about they don't have enough people, they don't have enough people, they don't have enough people. But if you sit down, nobody asks the question, like, have you mapped out like what they do with their time in a single day? Because, these caseworkers, they say they can't have more than 20 cases, but if they have 20 cases, that means they could go to every house, visit every kid, during the month, and then, still have time left to do other things. So I think that they're really not doing an analysis of what they're doing. Other meetings, special sessions, and then, like I said before, when you get to the legislative website, go ahead and put yourself in for email updates. Sometimes you can do it committees, by committee. Sometimes you just do it generally. You can do it by the calendar. You can make sure that you get the calendar emailed to you, etc. Okay, the federal legislative bodies. So the federal legislative bodies has a House of Representatives, a Congress it's called, which is 435, and that is totally geographic. So every state has a different number of representatives. In Tennessee, I think we have 6 or 7 now. I think we just added one. And then the Senate has 2 per state, and it is not geographic. So there are 50 senators, 435 representatives. Now, what does that mean to us as citizen lobbyists? And I know if Kathleen Arthur was here and was able to talk. She's like, I always go to the Senate because there's less of them. But most of the bills start in a committee with the House of Representatives. So again, there are certain committees, and I'm not going to go to that website right now, but there's a couple different committees on the House side. One of them is the Health and Welfare Committee. The other is the Workforce and Family Support Committee. Those are the two primary committees. Now, also sometimes in the Finance Committee, I know in the Senate side, the Finance Committee will also be looking at this because it has looking at child welfare stuff because it has to do with money. Now, so you want to know the bills and stuff. I do not have congress.com up here. I think I'm going to try to take you there real quick. I didn't pull this up, but let me pull this up for a second. All right, so you can go to congress.gov, and here you can also sign yourself up for alerts, but you can, again, you can search bills, and they are pretty good about, hold on one second. They are pretty good about, I'm going to type in children, CH if I can. The way the light's shining in my eyes, I can't see very well. All right, so you can type in children, and then it will show you anything that comes up with a hit for children. Oh, and I've read some of these, American Rescue Plan, remembering. Some of them are just resolutions. Some of them are just part of the congressional record. Children's Safe Welcome Act, that has to do with immigration. So you can, National Adoption Day. Oh, good Lord. Okay, then you can also, although sometimes it's harder to find, look up foster care. All right, so you'll see there are some also for foster care as well. And then if you really want to follow one, this is a resolution. I'm just going to go ahead and click on it. And you can see that there are different ways. Once you get in here, National Foster Care Month, they need National Reunification Month or something. Oh, that's not a very good one because it is not a bill, but it does show you up here where you can get the text of it. You can see what the actual actions were. You can see if there's any other titles, any amendments. You can see who the sponsors are, etc. All right, let me close that out. All right, now with the federal legislative bodies, also there's a calendar, and you can just Google congressional calendars, and you can pull up the Senate, the House of Representative calendars. They have a very odd calendar, and sometimes they overlap. Most of the time they do not. But when we have gone up there, you know, we have tried to look at the calendar and find a time when both houses are in session. And really for no other reason is sometimes you run into them in the hallway. And if you see somebody in the hallway, they may be going here, you know, here or there, but if you've studied and you know who those people are, you can say hello to them. Another thing is, like for Tennessee, they have a Tennessee breakfast on Tuesday morning, and Marsha Blackburn and Haggerty are there. And we went in and we got our picture taken and we talked to them. And so there's some type of a state breakfast or lunch or handshaking or something going on. So you want to be able to pull up the calendars and see when it is a good time to be present in Washington, D.C. The meetings, we had a great time in September of 2022. We had lots of meetings. A lot of them we didn't even get scheduled until we got up there, and we got people on email, and we split up into different groups. We had about 3 or 4 different groups, and we would have 4 or 5 people in a group, maybe sometimes 3 or 4, just depending. But we really, when you sit down, you want with them, and it's not generally going to be a congressman, it's going to be a legislative aide, but it is an opportunity. They have to document what happens. They have to document what people say. They make notes. We've not been really good about preparing just kind of a leave behind, a handout for them. But, you know, you've got to be able to tell your story in 20 to 30 minutes. And I know some of our older sessions, when we'd go up there, we'd have too many people with us and they'd get too carried away. and we'd kind of wear them out, you know, after a while. But, you know, it needs to be no more than 30 minutes. And it really breaks down into a why are we there, some kind of personal story about the tragedy of foster care and the tragedy of the CPS agencies. And then finally, you want to say, here's what we want you to do. Here's what we're asking for. I think one of the important things that we look forward in 2023 is we need to ask for hearings. We want some, you know, congressional hearings, some kind of a hearing so that they can really see what kind of damage is being done. And we want to be able to converge that with the academic world, the lawmaking world, the world of psychology, the world of law. And there's been enough rumblings now that if we can find people. I know people right now. I mean, I know academics, I know some state legislators who have already told me they would go to Washington, D.C. because they're so frustrated with the system. So, you know, we have to find out how to present that and how to get that edge in there to do that. All right, so back to Family Forward Project, another role as an organizer. So for every state, you need to know who, what, when, and where. So an organizer is somebody who's going to look at your state from a really from a grassroots level, like what other organizations are in the state? Do you have, and particularly organizations that deal with or help people who are vulnerable. There are so many small organizations out there, so many small little nonprofits who are trying to do some type of either event, or they're showing up. If you go to any political events or even to fairs or street festivals, you're going to see some type of a nonprofit out there. Every time I go to an event, I look for those people and I talk to those people and I get their card and I find out what they're doing. And I say, you know, we want to help reform the foster care system because of the long-term damage that it's done to children and how it is just not an effective system. So who are those organizations? Again, your academics. Who are the people who are in academics, and who are the political organizations? And it really doesn't matter which side you're on, whether you're a liberal or whether you're a conservative. The child welfare reform has hit both sides so hard. You know, for instance, in Tennessee, oops, somebody just marked on my screen here. Don't know who did that. Not me. Okay. So, oh goodness, whoever marked on there, I think you have to erase it. Okay, so I have a decoration. All right, so, thank you. So you, So political organizations, if you are inclined at all, and you don't have to go to the fancy meetings, but there are local political organizations in every community, whether you're in the GOP, whether you're interested in conservative politics, libertarian politics, Green Party politics, it doesn't matter. Those are the people in those local political organizations who are interested in change typically. And more and more and more and more and more, they're interested in accountability from the government. This used to be a huge for me to even get this point across, because it's like the politicians really didn't want anybody to be accountable. They just wanted to keep the same politicians in place. And we're having a lot of shakeup in that now. So this is such a prime time for us to kind of just start investing and finding out who is politically active. Other thing is events, letters, postcards, invitations. So you look at, again, any events that are coming up, letters, postcards, invitations. I would tell you what we have done before is during the legislative session, they actually had an opportunity to set a table up in the cafeteria. And we did the table event one time, and we just did it really simple. We just had a few flyers, photographs, stories about children, and, you know, just were able to chat with a few people and about some of the laws that we wanted change. So where are some small places that you can become involved? We don't have a lot of money. So, but if you see an event or you want to become involved in that, there are ways for us to do some fundraising. And that's more and more and more about awareness. Letters and postcards. I have printed postcards before, and we have done some of those where we have sent them out. And I am thinking that we're going to do that event again. Because we handwrite those postcards, we put something on the front of it. I have the front of it printed, and then the back of it is a place to write a short story about, please help my family. My family's been crushed by CPS. My family was wrongfully separated, just a 1 or 2 liner. And then we send it out to a politician. And we really need to keep those going. Invitations, that's kind of also writing postcards, etc., of inviting them to learn more about what's happening. Now, preparing event calendars. So I'm going to talk about Google a lot here. I know a lot of people hate Google, but honestly, it's just really the best platform for organizing a group of people. So you can create a Google Calendar. You can share that Google Calendar if you want to do one for your state. I do have a family forward Google Calendar, and maybe the best thing we do initially is I just share that with anybody who wants to perhaps put an event or something on that calendar so we can see what's going on and really kind of document things that are happening. So if you have events in your state, now what I am willing to do in particular states, as far as the Family Forward Project concerned, is do a particular live event in a state. So if there's a story in your state that really needs attention and it needs somebody to kind of professionally interview them and somebody who can ask them questions really directed about how the law worked in their case, which is very important, I will do that as a live event within that state. And then we will promote that within the other Family Forward groups if they want to, or Family Forward Project itself. So keep an eye open in your state for stories that are, there's some horrible, heartbreaking stories, but there's also just some very legally interesting, legally complicated stories that need to be sorted out. And there are so many people, and the reason this is so important, there are so many people who have reached out to me. And of course, so many people send me messages through Messenger. I cannot get to every person. I am not practicing law now. But what is amazing is how many people have said to me, just watching your videos, just looking at your posts, just looking at your YouTube channel gave me the strength and the knowledge and the information to be able to move forward. So we have got to continue to just put that out there for people. And then anywhere in your state. So, I live in the middle of a very long state. If I wanted to drive from one end of Tennessee to the other, it's like 10 hours long. It's such a long, narrow state. But honestly, as an attorney, out of the 95 counties, I have probably been in half the counties. There's a few rural counties I have not been in, but it is but we need to start reaching out to these other counties because we have to activate the public. We have to activate them. And the rural counties are sometimes some of the hardest hit, as I'm sure some of you already know. Now, what about you? Of course, I am, I'm really kind of addicted to this right now, I guess you would say, because I am relentless. I am not letting go. I don't care what happens. I am not going to stop. And I'm a little bit obnoxious about it. So I spent a lot of time working on this, and I have over the course of the past 10 years. Very important, though, to balance your life. And I think most of you already know that. And I'm here, this week I have 4 grandchildren with me, and I've had to chase them away from me here a couple times this evening, but you have to take care of those in your life who are around you who you care for, and please don't forget that. The next thing is really assessing what are your skills. Some people are better communicators than others. Some people are more comfortable talking than others, but communication is also a learned skill. So you have to say to yourself, what am I going to be willing to do to learn how to do in the communication process? Or am I better at just researching? Am I better in just digging in there and just, finding out budgets and start, tearing all of that apart? And I'm going to show you how I have used like Google Docs to kind of build my notes and my narratives. Your enthusiasm to work with others to build a dynamic state organization. These people right now who are involved in child welfare are so afraid of us. They are so afraid of us, and they're afraid of publicity, and they're afraid of us being knowledgeable. I mean, how many times is it just a matter of a parent not knowing how to ask for a relative placement, not knowing how to ask for their documents, not knowing how to ask for the investigative reports? All right. Some of it is just simple, basic knowledge that they trust the system, they think it's going to be okay, and then of course it's not. And talking, documenting, researching, those are just skills we can always develop more and more and more, and that's what it's going to take. Now, your willingness to learn is very important. Communication skills. I have had, a law firm for 30 years. I have trained attorneys and people that have worked with me in communication skills. And I'm going to start putting together some of those in, just like little training sessions that we can sit and talk about what those skills look like and just raise your comfort level. So many people are so afraid to talk to a state legislator. And, they are, just remember, those state legislators are your bankers and your pharmacists and your, some are attorneys, but some are just businessmen, right? They are just people. They have no special knowledge. They are not gurus in the field of legislation. They have to struggle through this, and they have to jump through all these hoops, and they have to sell it. And you need to give them some salesmanship to sell this when it happens. And personal stories are an important part of that. And then, of course, the listening skills are so important. You have to be able to ask them questions, to listen, to find out how you can help them. How can I help you? Every legislator wants to get a bill passed that he sponsored that has his name on it. And you have to help them identify the problem and then ask them how to help. And telling your story is so important. And you have to have a 3-minute story, a 10-minute story, and a 30-minute story. And typically the 30-minute story needs to be a dialogue, because people just get tired of hearing your voice. Just like this, you'll see I'm talking really quick, and I'm going to wrap it up here pretty quick, because I know just after a certain amount of time, you just don't even want to hear my voice anymore. And that's why it's broken up with a dialogue. And that's why interviews are so important. But you need a 3-minute and a 10-minute story. And you know what? This is work. And you have to sit and you have to type it up. You have to read it to yourself. You have to practice it. You have to time yourself. And when you go in to talk to legislators, you have it written down, but you know it well enough that you can sit and you can look at them in the eye and you can follow it with your finger. When I take my written speech in there, I've increased the type to, probably about 24 or 32 type. So it's nice big type, so I can follow it with my finger and I can talk to them, and then my finger still knows where I am if I have to look down and find my place. So your story is so important. Please, if you don't have your story, please work on it and write it down. And then documenting the use of electronic systems is very, very, very important. All right, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Calendars, they're all pretty important. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to click over here. This is just going to take you. Okay, so this is just Google Docs, all right? I love Google Docs. One of the reasons I love it is because I move around a lot. Sometimes I come down to the cabin, or I'm home, or I'm at the office, or I'm traveling. And the thing is with Google Docs, if I need to make any notes on my notes, I have it available to me immediately. So I just have it set up, and I'm going to show you. I have tons of stuff in here. But for instance, if you just make a few notes and then you want to title it, and I would usually put in here like the date. so that when I go over here and I click on untitled document, it fills in whatever you have on that first line. And so then I can go ahead and I can type, I can talk about who's here. I can make any kind of notes I want. And then if I want to, I can then either make a copy, I can share it with somebody else who they can co-edit it with me, or I can email a copy of it or a draft of it so that they can maybe look at it, make notes on it, or read it, but they cannot edit it. And I can also download it onto a computer. So it's so good because I'm just going to show you how I have used it, for instance. All right, so I've got a DCS 1125 update. Okay, so let me click on this one. So like for instance, on this one, I have just been making a ton of notes and I can add the links to my notes. So up here, I wanted to make myself a list of who I have learned to be the academics who have been talking about foster care reform for a long time. So, and I've read their stories and I've just kind of put them away. I wanted to collect this information for myself. The next section is just about the different types of data collection, which we didn't even talk about. And I'm probably going to do a video or do a Zoom session just on who is doing data collection and how you use that information. Because I just found out some really interesting stuff I'm going to share later. But these are different types of data collection that are the ultimate professional ones. So when you rely on that, you can tell the people you're talking to, I'm relying on AFCARs, I'm relying on the HHS data that they've collected. And then the title, it says but it's title 4, is the financing. So I can click on this, I can find out how the changes in financing. These are links that I have been researching, and then I copy the link. If you don't know how to copy a link, you just go up here, you highlight it, you right click on it, you copy it, and then you can go down here and you can right click and you can paste it. Okay, so I put my links in here. This is a little story about foster kidnapping. And then these are just some special stories about missing children, because that's one of the things I'm looking at right now, is who is reporting the missing children. And then I think this is the one where I made some notes about CAPTA and ASFA are both up for reauthorization. And I did some population. I actually did a news story pulling these statistics in. Go down here, Tennessee, child trends. Like these are children in poverty. One of the things that they don't ask a question about in the General Assembly is how can we prevent children going into foster care? Well, there's plenty of data out there that tells you that one of the problems we have is that 19% of the children, or 1 out of every 5 children living in Tennessee, is living in poverty. And so poverty, substance abuse, those are things that we know are risk factors for children. And they know that, we know it, and yet we don't do anything to attach for that problem. I was doing some work on adoption, the incentives. I pulled up the incentive chart. Let me see here. This is for Tennessee. This is the bonus money for Tennessee. And I went and I put it into my own chart, so you can develop a chart and you can just play around with these things. There are so many things to do here to help you make charts or collect your data. So this is important because it showed me that in 2021, $1,349,000 was collected just in adoption bonus money. I don't know what they're doing with that money. All right, so let's go down a little bit more here. Again, I did a news story. I collected this data and then I wrote a news story for this. Here's, like, for instance, I wanted a lot of different data in one source. So this is kind of a history of the agency, when who the commissioners were and when. So George Hadaway up until 2002. I went through and I listed every commissioner and their time frame, because a recent story I wrote, it was like we are now on 10 commissioners, and that with an average of 2.5 years per commissioner, which is part of our problem. I think I have Family First down here. That's why I'm scrolling down. Hang in there. As you can see, like I said, I'm a total nerd. Okay, so here, Family First. So I'm trying to follow up on who is implementing the Family First Act. And so I just Googled like Family First Vermont, Family First Connecticut, or just Family First implementation. And I just put the links in here right now. I haven't pulled up of how they're implementing it, but these are all the different states that have something published about implementing the Family First Act. So, but my point here is that for you to while you're doing research and while you're looking stuff up, collect that data so that you can share it with us. And it's not just a post in Facebook, because we've got to use that data then to write additional news stories, help other reporters have the right resources that they need. All right, so I just want to summarize and finish up here talking about what we've done, what we have accomplished, and we have done a lot of things. And, you know, when I look back and, you know, I have a lot of videos pop up, a lot of pictures pop up on my timeline. I've done several just very little collective videos of just the pictures. I've met incredible people, and many of you on here I've either talked to personally or have been at the events, and I just love you dearly, and you have become the most important people that I've ever met in my life, because you have this purpose, and we do have a purpose, and that makes your life totally different. So what are, you know, we've made trips to Washington, D.C. We started that beginning in 2015. You know, I've personally had trips to states where we've had some type of a little event or rally or a meeting, you know, Illinois, Missouri, Florida, Arkansas, North Carolina, Connecticut, Ohio, Michigan, Alabama, Tennessee, Washington, and Arizona. We've lobbied in DC for the Family First Act. We've worked with state legislators. I know I saw Lorena join us from Texas. I know how hard she worked to get the medical kidnap bill passed, or the second opinion bill might be a better word for it, passed in Texas. And when something like that happens, and this is why it's so important that we develop a connection, is like I took the Texas medical kidnap or second opinion bill to the Tennessee General Assembly. They always want to know what are other states doing. They were so overwhelmed. They thought it was so complicated, but I haven't given up. I'm going back to him. So if we get something happening in a state, we need to share it with the other states. I still want a family advocate bill. I tried to put it in last year. DCS came in and was against it. However, CAPTA is now supporting family advocacy, so we're not going to stop with that. We've worked with state legislators. We filed complaints with the state agency. This is another part. I didn't talk about this specifically, but this kind of falls into the researcher part of it, where you can learn how to help people write complaints that go to the state agency that we then copy to legislators, and that we make public noise. Social media, public noise, public noise, public noise. We have got to have a critical mass of voices that are non-stop. And I think that is the end. All right, so that is the end of this presentation. What I am going to do is I think I'm recording. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to stop the screen record. And then if you have any particular questions, we'll try to chat for a few minutes about some questions, but it is at about an hour. So if anybody wants to check out or has better things they need to go to, because I wanted to keep this close to an hour. So I'm going to stop the record.